Okay, common deficiencies for septic systems. Access and access riser and lid deficiencies. So if the lids are below grade, that's deficient for us. I want to see lids at grade. And then the lids should either be secured down with fasteners or 50 pounds, where a child can't just open them up and then fall in. So if it's a fiberglass type lid, there needs to be fasteners in place. It's very common that the fastener holes are stripped and the screws no longer really do anything. That's a deficiency for us. It's very common that there's 8 screw holes and there's 3 screws. So they're missing screws. That's a deficiency for us. We have comments for each one. Sometimes the lid is just damaged. It's cracked. There's a hole in it. That would be a deficiency for us. If it's a concrete lid, it needs to fit nice and tight over the hole. If the concrete is spalled or cracked or damaged and rainwater can get in, rodents can get in, that would be a deficiency for us. Okay, conventional system deficiencies. So there's not much that we can visually inspect with the conventional system, because when you open up the lids, the tanks are full of sewage and the scum layer is right there. So if the scum layer is too thick and it looks like it's time for the tanks to be pumped, go ahead and you can put that in as a deficiency or just an informational comment. It looks like there's a thick layer of scum. Every 3 to 5 years, these tanks should be pumped. I would recommend having a septic company inspect it and pump it as necessary. If you're able to see into the tank at all, then you should be checking for cracks, deterioration, tree roots, to the actual tank wall itself. There are some ways you can inspect some of the tank walls, even with a full septic tank. It's just, you can't really inspect a lot, and it's kind of hard to do, but it's with a mirror. You can stick a mirror, like a large enough mirror, down into the tank and shine a flashlight on it, and then just look all the way around the septic tank walls. And then I've also tried a borescope before, but the borescope, field of vision or field of view, it's too wide and you can't really see the walls that well. Nathan, do you have a question?
Yeah, tip, what I do, I have a docker pole, and then I put my XP 140 Canon, or I think it's Canon, Fuji, on the end of it. I lower it down, and then I go around 360, and it has a flash on it where it blows it up enough where I can see all around the inside of the tank. So I can see those root intrusions. I can see, well, sometimes I can see cracks.
Yeah,
Depends on the scum levels in there, but that helps me go all the way around the inside of the tank. And then it allows me to see the baffle on the other side when it goes from one tank to the other tank. You can see if it's actually, I found them where the middle concrete baffle has actually been deteriorated to the point where rebar has been showing through there. And so I'm glad I had that ability to do that with the camera. So that's a tip that I use. Might want to try that. That gives you a really good, especially if I'm going to be telling somebody, hey, no, it's good, right? And a little bit known, if baffles were broken, concrete was bad. So a little tip, that's
sure.
what I do.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I do have one of those Fuji cameras, so that's something I think I could do. If y'all don't
Yeah,
have one of those cameras, they are nice to have. They're
and
just
it
I don't think they
connects to
make
your
them
phone.
anymore.
It connects to your phone Wi-Fi. So I'm sitting there looking, I'm holding the docker pole with one hand. I'm looking at my phone as I'm turning. I'm just taking pictures as I walk around the inside of the tank.
Yeah, and so I think most septic tanks, you can do that about maybe 3 to 4 inches of the top of the tank. Every now and then you come across one where you have a nice 12-inch gap between that
Oh yeah.
scum layer and the top of the tank, but most, you're still not going to be able to see the majority of the tank, but anything's better than nothing. If the tank is damaged or cracked, it many times runs up that whole sidewall and you can see it at the top of the tank. Or if tree roots are coming in, it's usually going to be at the top of the tank or where the baffles are. So as long as you can see the top or the baffles, that's usually where you can catch those tree roots. So I would try something. A camera and the doka pole sounds like a good idea. At the very least, a mirror is better than nothing. And then, like he said, also check the baffles. You can usually see the inlet and outlet baffles. If you're able to get the lids off, they should be intact. You don't want to see them flooded where the water levels totally submerged one baffle. And then they shouldn't be cracked or damaged. Sometimes they're just gone. They've fallen off into the tank and it's just a sidewall hole sewage is emptying, just dumping into the tank. So that's a major deficiency for me. We don't want sewage to get back up in that lateral line. Aerobic system deficiencies. So everything that applies to conventional applies here. Other than that, the control panel needs to be treated like your typical electrical panel. Should be nice and secured to the wall. All the conduit should be in good condition and secured. Check for arcing or burnt wires or breakers that are loose. That panel's outside. It comes with a gasket, and it needs to seal well. So if there's damage to the door or the gasket's missing, that can be a deficiency. We've talked about the air pump deficiencies. It should be running, and then check for air leaks. Many times that little clamp will be loose or it's detached, and if you stick your hand down there, you'll feel air leaving the pipe. And then also at the treatment tank, you should see the churning water. And then the equipment functionality. So check the pump to make sure it's working. If you charge the system enough, that will automatically turn the pump on. And when that happens, I know the pump's working. But you also want to check the float, the high float and the high alarm float, to make sure the float switch is working. So all you have to do there is use a shovel or that long J PVC pipe, and you stick it down in the tank, and you lift the high pump float switch, and it will turn the pump on. And then you lift the high alarm switch, and you look over and you'll see the light turn on, and you should be able to hear it chirping. Sometimes it will scream at you and chirp, but the light won't work. That's deficient. The light bulb needs to be replaced. Sometimes the light will come on, but it won't scream at you. That's deficient. The alarm has either disconnected or it's not working anymore. And then both, like I said, both drain field and spray heads, walk over to them and look up close. Don't just look from far away and assume everything's fine. The biggest issue with leach fields that you could miss is whenever they are leaking, it may not be apparent at grade. You're not just going to see a big pond of water. It could be below the grass where you can't see it until you walk up to it. All right, so this is a common deficiency. We have exposed wire splices. This is a wet environment, and especially if this backs up and the water level rises, this should be in that J box and then sealed up. This is the chlorine pipe. So whenever you have that clean out riser in between the two tanks, there should be another pipe on the inside that you can remove, and it just slides up and out. Sometimes you have to twist it because there's a latch at the bottom, and you have to twist it, and then you can lift it up and out. Those chlorine tablets are corrosive, and eventually they can eat through the bottom of the PVC pipe, where when you pull it out, there's just nothing to hold the tablets. And if you drop a tablet in, it's just going to be washed into the pump tank. So we have a deficiency for that now. If there's no chlorine tablets at all, which is very common, homeowners just forget to do it. We have a deficiency that there's no chlorination system in place, or there's no way to disinfect the sewage water. And we recommend they add chlorine tablets or add chlorine solution if it's a liquid system. This here, you can actually see the trash tank and then the aeration tank. So on the left, you can see how that water's churning. And then obviously how much different that water looks than the settling tank. So this is our scum layer. This is the light stuff that floats to the top. This is what I would push through with my PVC pipe. And then once I push all the way through it, I can turn my J and then start gently pulling up, and I can get my depth of how thick that scum is. I can already tell that this looks to be somewhat thick. So it may be time to pump it out already. But I can see my inlet baffle. The sewage water just comes in and then flows down the pipe about 2 to 3 feet down. Here's an aerator. Like I said, very common. We have fire ants or ants all over it. This deficiency here was a lot of these holes were just stripped out or too large. You can see where they've added new holes. And I think this lid, if I remember right, had maybe 1 screw, maybe 2. So probably a new lid would be a good idea. And then this one here is an inappropriate cover, which we have a specific comment for. So every now and then out in the county, where rules don't apply. We'll see just sprinkler system boxes in place for the lids, but these don't seal correctly. They're not heavy enough where a child can't open them. There's no true fasteners, so a child can't open them. So this is easy access to a septic system where someone could get injured or breathe in toxic fumes, and it doesn't seal off correctly to prevent rainwater from dumping into the system.
Is that the septic, is that the tank right there? In the
Yeah,
bottom?
this is the pump tank.
Okay.
So, and then we had this one, which this was just a couple weeks ago for me, where when I first walked up, I thought we had inappropriate covers and lids, but then when I opened them, we had the nice concrete lids. So this one was fine. I think that I called the lids out for having a little bit of damage to them, but they appeared to seal off well. I didn't call out these boxes and lids as deficient because as of right now, these are just acting as risers. It's easy access for me to get down to the tank lid. All right. Every now and then you're going to come across a gigantic lid. It's like 4 feet across. You will not be able to open that. If you had another inspector with you, y'all will not be able to open that. You need something like a skid steer or a backhoe to get those lids off. So whenever I dig down to the tank, I'm always looking for a circle edge of the lid or the square edge of the lid. And this one, I found it pretty quick. I found this seam. And so I started to follow that seam. And I quickly learned this is one of those big lids where you have to have a chain to hoist it up. So we have a specific limitation for this, that this cannot be uncovered by a person. You need some kind of heavy equipment. And I go ahead and take a picture just showing how large the lid is, put it in the report. We still inspect, and the comment says we still inspect the system. We charge it, we walk the leach field. We just weren't able to uncover the tank. And I had this one. I just thought this was interesting. This little fella made his home inside a septic system. I don't know if he's able to get out. He may be stuck there forever. Poor guy. All right, then we had, I mentioned earlier, when you see tree roots, it's typically going to be at the top of the tank or where the inlet and outlet baffles are. And so we can see all the tree roots coming in, following that PVC pipe. This deficiency here was the floats aren't secured to the pipe. So we have our pump motor with the PVC pipe coming up and out. All the floats should be zip tied or secured in some way to the actual PVC pipe. When they're not, they just float and move too much to the point where they may not flip up when they're supposed to. So I could actually just pick this whole thing up and out of the tank to make for an easy picture. This is a spray head. These are usually easy enough to find because the homeowner or a builder will put flags where they are or wooden stakes, and they spray paint them purple or orange. This time they had a PVC pipe. So whenever I walked out to it, this is the one that I activated this again. And after I saw this, and sure enough, I could see water spraying out of the side of the head. So it looked like the head had cracked at some point, and it was spraying out of the top, but it was eroding. This was a hole. I could stick my foot down in this hole. It was eroding that soil around the area. And we had some damaged conduit with exposed wires. Dirty air filter, which you guys saw earlier. So this one was interesting. This was a brand new house. It was a phase 3 inspection, and they paid for a septic. And when I went out there, I saw the cleanouts, couldn't see any septic tanks, which is abnormal for, this was an aerobic system. So it used the air pump, it used, had the controller, and it's uncommon for those tanks to be totally buried. So I got my sewer camera, I stuck it down this pipe, and it 45'd a couple times, but I eventually was able to dig down and find the tank lids. And this was a brand new house, and it's impossible for me to fully charge these tanks because they're 1,500 gallon tanks. I can't put that much water in 2 hours. So I wasn't able to charge the system, but what was nice about this being brand new was they were empty. And so when I looked down into the tanks, there was a crack that went from the top all the way down to the bottom, all the way across the bottom, and all the way back up the top. And when you fill this with sewage, all that's going to get into the crack and it could cause it to expand or spall or crack even more. So this wound up being a concern of mine, pretty big concern of mine, just due to what it could lead to. If water seeps down below the tank, it's going to cause it to either deteriorate anymore, or it could also cause it to settle and drop and shift. And that's a major concern. Very expensive to fix. Okay, so let's talk about how we report on septic systems. And this will be my recommendation to y'all. Internachi has a great form that you can all use for free. And that's basically what we use. We've modified it just a little bit. Okay, so the only thing that we have to report on, according to Trek SOP, are these 4 things right here. Well, sorry, that's not true. These 2 things right here. What type of system we have? It was an aerobic system. And then location to any proximity. Yeah, right here. The proximity to wells and whatnot. So we also have in where it is in relation to the property. It's north. And then we have an area where we put in photos of whatever we want. I recommend doing at least the photos of the tanks uncovered, just to show that you did uncover the tanks. And then also where they are on the property. And then where the equipment is, I put in videos of the equipment, and then also the spray heads in operation. And then I took pictures looking down into the tanks themselves. And you don't have to do any of this stuff at all if you don't want to. This is just what we decided to do to share with our clients and also to protect ourselves. All right. And then down below that, we have proximity to any known wells or underground water supply. And then that's for the drainage field, and then the same for the tanks.